"You don't smile much, do you?" It was the kind of question you don't ask a stranger on a blind date. But Grace Williams had never been good at following rules, especially the unspoken ones about keeping things light and safe. The man across from her, Tae-hyun Kim, black suit, dark eyes that held secrets like an ocean holds storms, looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something that would change both their lives forever. "Maybe I forgot how." Have you ever met someone and known instantly that they would unravel everything you thought you understood about love, danger, and second chances? Grace didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just another blind date. This was the beginning of something that would cost them both nearly everything and save them from the ghosts they'd been running from. But let's back up, because the real story, the one that would lead to gunfire, sacrifice, and a love powerful enough to pull a man back from darkness, started 20 minutes earlier. It was a Thursday evening in Koreatown, at a restaurant Grace's friend had recommended. She'd almost canceled 3 times. Her heart was still healing from the last man who'd promised forever and delivered goodbye. But here she was, smoothing her navy dress and telling herself to breathe. The restaurant glowed amber. Soft jazz drifted through the air, mingling with the scent of soy and sesame. She checked her phone. No message. Maybe he wouldn't show. Then the door opened. He walked in like silence itself. Tailored suit, controlled movements, shoulders that carried weight she couldn't name. His face was handsome in a weathered way, sharp jawline softened by something sad around the eyes. Late 30s, maybe. Composed in a way that suggested he'd learned stillness as a survival skill. Their eyes met across the room. He moved toward her table. "Grace Williams?" His voice was low, warm despite the coolness in his posture. "That's me." She stood, extending her hand. "And you must be Tae-hyun Kim." His handshake was brief. He pulled out her chair before taking his own, a gesture that felt both courteous and automatic. "Your mother set this up?" Grace asked. A slight smile. "She's persistent." "Mine too. They went to the same church 20 years ago." Small world. The waiter arrived. They ordered. She tried not to stare, but there was something magnetic about his stillness. Most people fidgeted. Tae-hyun sat like a man who'd learned to be invisible. She reached for her water glass. Her hand trembled slightly. Nerves, maybe. And the glass tipped. He moved before she could blink. His fingers wrapped around the glass mid-fall, water barely sloshing over the rim. He set it upright, then calmly pulled out a handkerchief to dab the few drops on the table. "No harm done," he said quietly. His voice carried warmth despite the reserve in his posture, like embers buried under ash. Grace exhaled, embarrassed. "I swear I'm not usually this clumsy." "Everyone's allowed a moment." She studied him. "You don't smile much, do you?" Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Maybe I forgot how." The honesty caught her off guard. Most men would have deflected with humor, but Tae-hyun just looked at her, patient and still, as if waiting to see what she'd do with his truth. The food arrived. They ate slowly, conversation drifting between safe topics, her work as a teacher, his import-export business, the weather. But underneath it all, Grace felt something else, a pull, a question neither of them was asking. When he reached into his pocket for his phone, something small and metallic fell onto the table between them, a Zippo lighter, silver, worn smooth at the edges, and engraved on the front, a single letter. H. Grace picked it up before he could. The metal was warm from his body heat. She turned it over in her palm, thumb tracing the engraving. Without thinking, she flicked it open. The flame sparked to life, casting golden light across her face. For a moment, Tae-hyun just stared. The fire reflected in her eyes, making them glow like amber. "What's the H for?" she asked softly, closing the lighter. Tae-hyun's expression shifted, just for a heartbeat, something raw and unguarded. "Someone I used to be," he said. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and the walls came back up. "I'm sorry, I have to take this." He stood, leaving his napkin on the table. Grace watched him step outside, his silhouette backlit by the restaurant's neon sign. Through the window, she saw his posture change, shoulders tightening, jaw setting. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw his lips move. "Warehouse 17? A pause. "When?" His expression darkened. Whatever the call was, it wasn't good. When he returned, the warmth was gone. "I apologize. Something came up at work." "It's okay. I'll cover dinner." He placed cash on the table, too much, and turned to leave. "Wait." Grace held up the lighter. "You forgot this." He paused, looked at it, looked at her. "Keep it," he said, "in case we meet again." Then he was gone, disappearing into the Los Angeles night. Grace sat alone, the Zippo still warm in her hand. The fire inside her curiosity had just been lit. Grace told herself not to overthink it. But when she got home that night, she couldn't stop turning the lighter over in her hands. It sat on her nightstand like a question. Who was H? She searched online for him. Nothing. He's private, she reasoned. Not everyone lives online. Still, something nagged at her. The way that call had changed him. Friday morning, she threw herself into lesson planning, but around noon, her friend Keisha texted, "Girl, how was the blind date?" Grace typed back, "Weird. Interesting." He left his lighter behind. "You gonna see him again? I don't even have his number." "Then move on, babe." But Grace couldn't. Then the door opened. The same hostess greeted her at the restaurant. "Table for one?" "Actually, I was here last night. A gentleman may have left his wallet behind. I found it under the table." Grace had spotted the worn leather wallet after he'd left. "I was hoping you could help me return it." The hostess's expression shifted. "Mr. Kim, he's a regular." "Could you give me his contact information?" "I'm sorry, we don't give out personal details." As Grace turned to leave, a man in a gray suit entered. Sharp, watchful eyes. "Yun-woo," the hostess said. "This young woman found Mr. Kim's wallet." The man studied Grace with intensity. Not hostile, just assessing. "I'll see that he gets it," Yun-woo said, extending his hand. Grace hesitated. Something about handing over the wallet felt like giving up her only connection. But what choice did she have? She opened it first, just a glance. Inside, a few cards, some cash, and a photograph. Creased, faded, but clear enough. A woman and a young boy, maybe 6 years old. The woman was smiling, the boy laughing, and between them stood a younger version of Tae-hyun, his arm around the woman's shoulders, his hand ruffling the boy's hair. He looked happy. He didn't strike me as the kind of man who'd keep old photos, Grace thought, unless he still cared. She handed the wallet to Yun-woo. "Please tell him Grace Williams returned it." Yun-woo's expression softened, just slightly. "I will." But as Grace walked to her car, she couldn't shake the image of that photograph, the ghost of a family. The weight in Tae-hyun's eyes suddenly made terrible sense. Whoever H was, they weren't just someone he used to be. They were someone he'd lost. What would you do if you discovered the person across from you was carrying more than just secrets? They were carrying grief? If this story is stirring something in your heart, subscribe and stay with us. There's so much more to unfold. 1 week passed. Grace threw herself into work, but Tae-hyun's face kept surfacing in quiet moments. Then, on the following Saturday, her school held a special assembly. The Kim Foundation was funding a new community library. The principal had asked Grace to give a thank you speech. She stood at the podium. Education isn't just about books. It's about hope. It's about showing children that their stories matter. This library represents belief in them, in us, in what we can build together. Applause filled the room. And that's when she saw him, Tae-hyun Kim, standing near the back, his eyes fixed on her with something she hadn't seen before, respect. After the ceremony, Grace found herself cornered by well-meaning parents. But through the crowd, she felt his presence. Finally, she broke free. He was waiting by the refreshment table. "Looks like fate owes me another dinner," he said quietly. Grace smiled. "Or you owe me an explanation. Walk with me?" They left together, drawn toward the beach 2 blocks away. Seagulls cried overhead, waves rolled in, patient and rhythmic. For a while, they didn't speak. "Did you get your wallet?" Grace asked. "I did. Thank you." "I saw the photo." His jaw tightened. "My family, a long time ago." "What happened?" "They're gone." 2 words, an entire lifetime of pain. Grace didn't push. She'd learned that some stories had to be offered, not extracted. "The Kim Foundation. That's your family's?" "My mother's. She believes in legacy, in making amends. And you, I believe in keeping people safe." There was an edge to his voice, protective and fierce. They walked until the sun touched the horizon. Tae-hyun asked about her students, her childhood, her favorite books. He listened like listening was a skill he'd perfected. At the parking lot, Grace turned. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did you really leave that lighter behind?" A pause, then a small smile, real this time, though tinged with sadness. "Maybe I wanted a reason to see you again." Her heart did something complicated. "Then why didn't you call?" "Because, Grace." He stepped closer. "People close to me don't stay safe." "I'm not asking for safety. I'm asking for honesty." "Then here's the truth. I haven't felt this alive in 10 years, and it terrifies me." His phone buzzed. That familiar wall slid back into place. "I have to go. But Grace, lock your doors tonight." He walked away, leaving her in the golden light with more questions than answers. But this time she knew she'd see him again. The next 2 weeks unfolded like pages in a book Grace couldn't put down. Tae-hyun called regularly. They met for coffee, then dinner, then walks through Little Tokyo, where he showed her his favorite bookstore. He bought her a children's book, a Korean folktale. "For your classroom," he said. "You know I teach 3rd grade, not kindergarten." "Everyone deserves a good story, no matter their age." She looked up at him, and for a moment the street noise faded. "Thank you," she said quietly. One afternoon, he invited her to tea. "My mother wants to meet you." "Already?" "She arranged the blind date. She feels invested." A pause. "You don't have to." "No, I want to." The next day, Grace stood on the steps of an elegant craftsman home, pastries in hand. Tae-hyun opened the door, looking nervous for the first time. "She's going to love you," he said, taking her hand. Madam Kim was 70 but carried herself like royalty. Silver hair, beautiful jade green traditional Korean dress, sharp eyes. But when she smiled, Grace saw where Tae-hyun got his warmth. "Grace Williams, the teacher who makes my son smile again. Come sit." They drank jasmine tea. Madam Kim asked about Grace's family, her work, her dreams. "My son has not brought a woman to meet me in many years, not since he lost his wife and child." She turned to Grace. "Then you came to that blind date. Now when he calls, I hear something I thought was gone forever." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "What do you hear?" "Hope." After tea, as Tae-hyun walked Grace to her car, she said, "Your mother is wonderful. She likes you. She used her good tea set. That's practically an engagement announcement in her mind." Grace laughed, warmth unfurling in her chest. They spent more time together. One evening, they sat in his car overlooking the coastline. Rain tapped against the windshield. Grace watched droplets race down the glass. "Can I ask you something?" "The answer's always yes." "Why do you always look like you're waiting for something bad to happen?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because it usually does." "That's not a way to live. It's the only way I know." "Then maybe you need someone to show you different." He met her eyes. The rain blurred the world outside. I don't know if I'm capable of different anymore, Grace. She reached over, her hand covering his. Everyone's capable of change. They just need a reason to try. His fingers curled around hers, tentative, as if he'd forgotten how to hold someone. You're motivational in a way I didn't expect. Grace smiled. Is that your way of saying I'm stubborn? It's my way of saying you make me believe things I stopped believing a long time ago. They sat in the rain for another hour, hands intertwined. Later, when he drove her home, Grace felt something shift, a door opening in a room she'd locked after her last heartbreak. At her apartment door, Tae-hyun hesitated. Grace, if things ever feel dangerous, if you ever feel unsafe, you call me, no matter what time. Why would I feel unsafe? His jaw tensed. Just promise me. She saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. I promise. He stepped back, but before he turned away, Grace stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Brief, warm. Good night, Tae-hyun. His hand came up to touch the spot where her lips had been. Good night, Grace. Inside her apartment, Grace looked at the children's book. On the first page, written in careful handwriting, to Grace, who reminds me that stories can have happy endings. Ta'ati. She pressed the book to her chest and smiled. Everything shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Grace had just finished teaching a lesson on fractions when the school secretary knocked on her door. Miss Williams, your car's blocking the delivery truck. Could you move it? Grace grabbed her keys, waving at her students. Be right back. Marcus, you're in charge. Don't make me regret it. The class giggled. She stepped into the hallway, the familiar smell of floor wax and construction paper following her out. She passed Mrs. Park's office on the way. The principal was on the phone, but she waved at Grace through the glass window, a gesture of trust and affection. Mrs. Park had been the one to hire Grace 3 years ago, had believed in her when she was fresh out of college, with more idealism than experience. This world, Grace thought as she pushed through the front doors, this safe, bright world where the biggest crisis is a child forgetting their lunch. She had no idea how fragile that safety was. The parking lot was quiet. 3 o'clock sunshine slanted across the asphalt. Grace clicked her key fob, her old Honda beeping in response. Then she heard it. A sharp crack, like a firecracker, but deeper, angrier. Another crack, another. Gunfire. Grace froze. Her teacher instinct screamed, "Get inside, lock the doors," but her body wouldn't move. She turned toward the sound. At the far end of the parking lot, near the loading zone, 2 black SUVs were parked at harsh angles. Men in suits, 4 of them, were moving with tactical precision. And in the center of it all, pulling someone from a smoking vehicle, was Tae-hyun Kim. Not just Tae-hyun, the commander, the one giving orders, the one the others deferred to with swift nods and immediate action. Grace's breath stopped. He moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. No hesitation, no wasted motion. He dragged a bleeding man behind cover, then turned and saw her. Their eyes locked across 50 yards of chaos. "Grace!" His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Get down!" She dropped instinctively, knees hitting the pavement. Another shot rang out, glass exploding somewhere to her left. Then Tae-hyun was running, not away from the danger, but toward her. He reached her in seconds, his hand iron-strong around her wrist. "Move. Now." She stumbled as he pulled her upright, his body between her and the gunfire. They ran. Her purse fell. She didn't care. He shoved her into a black SUV, slamming the door behind them. "Drive!" he barked at the man behind the wheel. The vehicle lurched forward. Grace gripped the seat, heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. What is—" "Seatbelt," Tae-hyun ordered, his voice sharp. He was checking her over with clinical efficiency, hands, arms, face. "Are you hurt? Did anything hit you?" "No, Tae-hyun, what's happening?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone, barking instructions in Korean. Outside the window, Los Angeles blurred past. They were moving fast, too fast, running red lights weaving through traffic. Grace's hands shook. "You need to tell me what's going on. I will, not here. Yes, here." Her voice cracked. Fear had turned to anger, sharp and bright. "You lied to me! Who are you?" Taehyun's expression was carved from stone. "The man trying to keep you alive." 20 minutes later, they pulled into an underground garage. The SUV stopped in front of a private elevator. Taehyun got out, opened her door, and offered his hand. Grace ignored it. She climbed out on her own, legs unsteady but functional. They rode the elevator in silence. It opened directly into a penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than her annual salary. "Sit," Taehyun said, gesturing to the sofa. "I don't want to sit. I want answers." He turned to face her fully. In the afternoon light, she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight of secrets, the burden of violence. "I used to be a police officer," he said quietly. "Undercover. Deep cover. I infiltrated a Korean-American organized crime syndicate, what you might call the mafia. I was supposed to gather evidence, build a case, get out." Grace's breath caught. "What happened?" "I went too deep, became too valuable, and when I finally tried to surface..." His voice broke slightly. "They killed my wife and son, revenge for my betrayal." The photo, the sadness, the way he moved through the world like a man already dead. It all made terrible sense. "So you stayed," Grace whispered. "You stayed in that world." "I had no choice. The department couldn't protect me. The people I'd infiltrated wanted me alive. I knew too much, had too many connections. So I became what they needed me to be. A ghost. A leader. A man without a past." Grace sat down then, her legs finally giving out. "And the import-export business? A front. Most of what we do is legal now. I've been working to move operations into legitimate territory. But there are still elements. People who profit from chaos. Like the man who ordered the hit today." "Why?" Her voice was small. "Why come after you now?" "Because I'm trying to get out," Taehyun said. He knelt in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "For the first time in 10 years, I want out. And men like Vincent Cho, they see that as weakness." "Vincent Cho? My former second-in-command. He wants control, and he'll use anyone close to me as leverage." The implication hit Grace like cold water. "He'll come after me. Not if I can stop him." Taehyun's hands clenched into fists. "Grace, I never should have let you get close. I knew the risk, but you made me remember what it felt like to be human." Tears burned Grace's eyes. "So this, us, it was real. It was the only real thing I've had in a decade." She stood abruptly, needing space. "I need time. I need to think. I'll have Yoon Woo take you home. You'll have protection. I don't want your protection." The words came out harsher than she intended. "I want the truth, all of it. No more secrets." Taehyun rose slowly. "The truth is, I'm in love with you, Grace Williams, and that makes you the most dangerous thing in my life." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest and impossibly complicated. Grace's heart was breaking and healing all at once. "Then let me go," she said, tears spilling over. "If loving me puts me in danger, let me go." "I can't." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I've tried. I can't." Grace walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. Below, the city sprawled endlessly, millions of lives, millions of stories, and she'd somehow stumbled into one that might destroy her. "I need to go home," she said finally. "Okay." Alone. Taehyun's silence was answer enough. She turned. "I mean it. No guards, no surveillance. You want to prove this is real? Prove you respect my choice." It was a test. They both knew it. Taehyun pulled out his phone, typed something, then set it on the table. "The code to the garage elevator is 0824. You can leave whenever you want. No one will stop you." Grace stared at him. "What's 824? "My son's birthday." His voice cracked. "August 24th. And there it was. The deepest vulnerability. The wound that had never healed. Grace walked to the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened. She looked back once. Tae-hyun stood in the center of his minimalist fortress, looking more alone than anyone she'd ever seen. "I'm not saying goodbye," Grace said. "I'm saying I need time." "Take all the time you need." The elevator doors closed. Grace pressed her forehead against the cold metal, silent tears streaming down her face. She loved him. God help her, she loved him. But love built on lies, even well-intentioned ones, wasn't a foundation. It was quicksand. 4 days of silence. Grace went through the motions, teaching, grading, smiling at colleagues, but her mind was elsewhere. She'd meant what she said. She needed time to process everything, but she also couldn't stop thinking about him. On Friday evening, Grace stayed late at school. 3 of her students had been in a car accident. Minor injuries, but they were shaken. She'd gone to the hospital to sit with their families, to reassure parents, to hold small hands and tell stories until the fear faded. It was past 9 when she finally left the hospital. The parking garage was nearly empty, her footsteps echoing against concrete. She clicked her key fob, her Honda beeping in the distance. She didn't see them until it was too late. 2 men stepped from behind a van. One moved behind her, blocking her path back to the elevator. The other approached from the front. "Miss Williams." The voice was calm, professional. "Please come with us. Don't make this difficult." Terror flooded her system, but Grace forced herself to think. Stay calm. Find an opening. Scream if you can. I don't know what you want, but... The man behind her grabbed her arm, hard enough to leave marks. She twisted, trying to break free, opening her mouth to scream. A cloth pressed over her nose and mouth. Chemical smell. Sweet. Overwhelming. Grace fought, but her limbs grew heavy. The world tilted sideways. Then darkness. When Grace woke, her head throbbed. She was sitting in a metal chair, hands zip-tied behind her. The room was industrial. Concrete floors, high ceilings, the smell of salt and fish. A warehouse, maybe, near the docks. A man stood in front of her, mid-40s, expensive suit, cold calculation in his eyes. "Miss Williams," he said with false courtesy, "I apologize for the rough handling. My associates can be overly cautious." Grace's mouth was dry. "Who are you?" "Vincent Cho. Perhaps Tae-hyun mentioned me." Fear spiked through her, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you want?" "Leverage." He gestured casually. "Your boyfriend has something I need. Information, passwords, access to certain offshore accounts. He's been reluctant to cooperate." "He's not my boyfriend." "No." Vincent smiled without warmth. "Interesting. Then this video I'm about to send him will be meaningless." He pulled out his phone, angling it toward her. "Say hello to the camera, Miss Williams." Grace pressed her lips together, refusing to speak. Vincent nodded to one of his men. The man stepped forward, his presence a clear threat. "Say hello," Vincent repeated, his voice hardening, "or my associate will make this very unpleasant for you." Grace's heart hammered. But she thought of her students, how she taught them to stand up to bullies, to be brave even when they were scared. Be brave, she told herself. Show no fear. Go to hell, she said clearly. Vincent's expression hardened. He struck her across the face, a sharp, stunning blow that made her vision blur. Pain exploded across her cheekbone. She tasted blood from her split lip. "You have courage," Vincent said coldly. "Tae-hyun always did prefer strong-willed women. Let's see if he still cares enough to save you." He sent the video. 50 miles away, Tae-hyun's phone buzzed. He was in a meeting with his mother and Yoon Woo, discussing exit strategies, how to hand over evidence to the FBI, how to dissolve operations, how to disappear and start over. He glanced at the notification. An unknown number. His blood turned to ice the moment he played the video. Grace, bound, bleeding. in Vincent's warehouse. "Bring the files, or she dies," Vincent's voice said. "Long Beach, Warehouse 17. Come alone. You have 2 hours." Tae-hyun stood so fast his chair crashed backward. "What is it?" his mother asked, alarmed. He showed them the video. Yoon-woo cursed. "It's a trap. He'll kill you both." "I know." Tae-hyun was already moving, pulling on his jacket, checking his weapon. "Then we call Detective Seo." "No time." Tae-hyun's voice was flat, final. "She'll be dead before the FBI mobilizes." His mother grabbed his arm. "Tae-hyun, please, think." He met her eyes. "I am thinking, Aoyama. For the first time in 10 years, I'm thinking clearly." He pulled her into a brief, fierce embrace. "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I loved her. Tell her she was right. I could change." Then he was gone. Warehouse 17 sat at the edge of Long Beach Harbor, rusted and abandoned. Moonlight reflected off black water. The air smelled like diesel in decay. Tae-hyun arrived alone. He walked through the front entrance, hands visible, a tablet computer tucked under one arm. Vincent stood in the center of the warehouse, Grace still tied to the chair beside him. 4 armed men flanked them. "You came," Vincent said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I came." Tae-hyun's eyes found Grace. Her face was swollen, but she was alive, conscious. "Hold on," he thought. "Just hold on. Do you have the files?" Tae-hyun held up the tablet. "Everything. Accounts, passwords, contacts. Enough to make you the most powerful man in 3 states. And you'll just give it to me? Out of love?" Vincent laughed. "You've gone soft, Kim." Tae-hyun stepped closer. "Maybe. But soft things still hurt when they break." Something flickered in Vincent's expression. Uncertainty. "Let her go," Tae-hyun said quietly. "You have what you want." "Do I?" Vincent gestured to one of his men. "Check the tablet." The man took it, scrolling through files. After a moment, he nodded. Vincent smiled. "Well, well. You actually did it. You chose her over everything." "I chose what was right." Tae-hyun's voice hardened. "Something you've never understood. Right? Wrong?" Vincent shrugged. "These are words men use to justify their choices. I don't need justification. I take what I want." "Then take the tablet and let us leave." "I don't think so." Vincent drew a gun, pointing it at Grace's head. "You see, Tae-hyun, I can't have you running around with a conscience. It's bad for business." Grace's eyes met Tae-hyun's. She wasn't crying, wasn't begging. She just looked at him with something like forgiveness. "I'm sorry," he thought. "I'm so sorry." Then the warehouse exploded into chaos. The skylight shattered. Ropes dropped. SWAT team, FBI tactical unit, descended like angels of wrath. "Drop your weapons!" Vincent spun toward the sound, fury twisting his face. In that split second of distraction, Tae-hyun moved. He threw himself at Grace, knocking the chair backward as Vincent's gun went off. The bullet meant for Grace's head caught Tae-hyun in the shoulder instead. A white-hot punch that spun him sideways. He felt the impact before the pain, felt Grace's scream vibrating through his chest as he covered her body with his own. Then return fire erupted. Bullets tore through the air above them, shouting. The metallic taste of adrenaline and blood. When the smoke cleared, Vincent's men were on the ground, dead or surrendered. Vincent himself was clutching his leg, blood pooling beneath him. Detective Seo stepped forward, weapon trained on Vincent. "Vincent Cho, you're under arrest." Tae-hyun didn't watch. He was sawing through Grace's zip ties with his left hand, his right arm hanging useless, blood soaking through his jacket. "Are you okay? Grace, talk to me." "I'm okay, but oh God, you're bleeding." "I'm fine," he lied, teeth gritted against the pain. He pulled her into his arms with his good arm, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Alive. She was alive. "How did the FBI—" Grace started, then noticed the blood. "Tae-hyun, you're hurt." "It's not bad," he said. though his vision was starting to blur at the edges. Yoon Woo emerged from the shadows, phone in hand, face grim. "Your location was tracked the moment you left the penthouse. I called Detective SEO against your orders. She's been waiting for an opportunity to take down Vincent for 2 years." Tae-hyun looked at his assistant, his friend. "I told you to stay back." "And I told you I wouldn't let you die for nothing." Yoon Woo's voice cracked slightly. "You were willing to sacrifice yourself. I wasn't willing to let you." Grace pulled back, studying the blood spreading across Tae-hyun's shoulder. "We need to get you to a hospital." "In a minute." He swayed slightly. "First, I need to make sure you're—" His knees buckled. Grace and Yoon Woo caught him together. "Ambulance is already on the way," Detective Seo said, appearing at Grace's side. She was a woman in her 50s, Korean American, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She looked at Tae-hyun with something complex: anger, respect, old grief. "You stubborn fool," she said quietly. "You always did think you had to save everyone alone." "CEO," Tae-hyun managed, his voice weak. "You came." "Of course I came. You think I'd let you throw your life away after everything?" She knelt beside him, her hand on his uninjured shoulder, the gesture of an old friend, not just a cop. "We were partners once, Kim. Before you went deep, before they took your family, I've been waiting 10 years for you to come back." "I couldn't." "I know." Her voice softened. "I know what they did to you, what you became to survive. But it ends tonight. Vincent's done. His network's done. You can finally stop running." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "Thank your mother. She's the one who insisted on the backup plan." Grace pulled back slightly, studying Tae-hyun's face. "You were going to sacrifice yourself." "Yes, for me." Without hesitation. Her eyes filled with tears. "You're an idiot." "I know. A beautiful idiot." He laughed, a sound that felt foreign in his throat. "I'll take it." The hospital kept Tae-hyun for 3 days. The bullet had passed through cleanly. Grace visited every day. On the 4th day, he was released. The next 2 weeks passed in testimonies and paperwork. Vincent Cho faced federal charges. His organization crumbled. Tae-hyun cooperated fully with the FBI, handing over everything. Detective Seo told him he'd likely avoid prison. "You'll have to testify. Witness protection is available." "I don't want to hide anymore," Tae-hyun said. Grace had refused protection too. "I'm not leaving my students. I'm not letting fear dictate my life." When Grace returned to school, Mrs. Park pulled her aside. "Are you sure you're ready?" "I'm ready." The children needed consistency. Her students had made her a card, construction paper covered in crayon drawings. "We missed you, Miss Williams." During story time, one of her students asked, "Miss Williams, were you scared?" "Yes, James, I was very scared." "But you came back anyway?" "I did. Because being brave doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you're afraid, and you do the right thing anyway." Tae-hyun had moved to a small beach apartment in Malibu. Grace insisted on helping him settle in, his shoulder still healing. She visited one Saturday morning, arms full of groceries. He opened the door slowly, favoring his right side. Jeans, white t-shirt, injured arm in a sling. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." Grace made tea, unpacked groceries, moving with efficient care. The apartment was sparse but warm. Books, a blanket, and a potted plant. Something green and alive. "You're growing things," Grace observed. "Trying to." Unwoo said it's hard to kill. She smiled, then moved to his side. "Let me check the bandage." He tensed, but didn't protest. Grace peeled back the gauze. The wound was healing cleanly. "It looks good," she said, replacing the bandage. Her fingers lingered. "Grace, I would do it again. Take that bullet, 1,000 times." She looked up. "I know. That's what terrifies me." For the next hour, they moved in quiet domesticity. but eventually the silence grew heavy. "How are you?" Grace asked. "Really? I don't know. I've spent 10 years being someone else. Now I'm trying to remember who I was before." "And who were you?" He met her eyes. Someone who believed in justice, in protecting people, in making the world a little safer. "That's still who you are," Grace said gently. "Is it?" His voice cracked. "Grace, I've done things, terrible things, to maintain my cover. People are in prison because of evidence I helped manufacture. People are dead because I looked the other way." She stepped closer. "But you're making it right now. You're testifying. You're bringing down the people who profit from suffering." "Does that erase what I've done?" "No, but it's a start." He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Grace sat beside him, close but not touching. "I was a cop once," he said quietly. "Undercover narcotics. Young, idealistic. I thought I could change things." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, things changed me." "Tell me," Grace said. "Tell me everything." So he did. He told her about the operation that went wrong, about his partner who was killed, about how the department had asked him to go deeper, to become indispensable to the organization. He told her about meeting his wife, Hannah, at a cafe, about falling in love despite knowing he was living a lie, about their son, Jin, who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. He told her about the day Vincent's predecessor had discovered the truth, about coming home to find his family gone, about identifying their bodies. "I was going to surface that week," Tae-hyun whispered. "I'd told my handler I was done, and they killed them because I loved them." Grace's eyes burned with tears. "Tae-hyun." "So I stayed, because if I left, they'd come after everyone I'd ever cared about. My mother, my sister, anyone." He looked at her. "I built walls so high I thought no one could ever get close again." "And then you met me," Grace said softly. "And then I met you." His smile was sad. "A blind date I didn't want. A woman who asked if I'd forgotten how to smile. And somehow you broke through every defense I had." Grace took his hand. "You were undercover for so long, you forgot you were playing a role. But Tae-hyun, the real you, he's still in there. He's still good." "How can you know that?" "Because you saved me. Not because you had to, because you wanted to. Because in that moment you chose love over everything else." She cupped his face. "That's not a bad man. That's a man who's been hurt so deeply he forgot what healing feels like." A tear slipped down his cheek, the first she'd seen him cry. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "How to be normal." "Neither do I," Grace said. "But maybe we can figure it out together." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. She held him as he shook, 10 years of grief finally breaking free. They stayed like that until the sun began to set, painting the apartment in shades of gold and amber. Later, they sat on the balcony, watching the ocean. The waves rolled in, patient and eternal. Grace noticed something on the kitchen table that hadn't been there earlier. His gun. Black, heavy, deliberate. The same weapon he'd carried for 10 years. Tae-hyun followed her gaze. "I took it out of storage today." Grace tensed. "Why?" "To remind myself." He stood, walking over to it. He picked it up slowly, weighing it in his good hand, then set it back down with careful precision. "It stays there now, on the table, visible, a choice I make every morning when I wake up." "What choice?" He met her eyes. "To walk past it, to choose something different, to remember that I don't have to be what I was." Grace understood. The gun wasn't hidden in shame or thrown away in denial. It was there, present, a daily reminder of the man he used to be and the man he was becoming. The next morning, Grace found Tae-hyun already awake, standing at the window. He was looking out at the ocean, and the gun still sat on the table behind him, untouched. He turned when he heard her, and there was something new in his expression. Peace, maybe, or the beginning of it. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning." They sat on the balcony watching the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I need to ask you something," Tae-hyun said. "Okay. Why did you come back? After everything I put you through, why are you here?" Grace considered the question. "Because I saw your truth. Not the mafia boss, not the undercover cop. I saw the man who carries a photograph of his family, who buys children's books for third graders, who looks at the ocean like he's searching for something he lost. And what did you see? Someone worth loving." The words hung in the air, precious and fragile. "Grace Williams," Tae-hyun said slowly, "you are the most inspirational person I've ever met. You make me believe in things I thought were dead." "Like what?" "Second chances. Redemption." He turned to face her fully. "Love?" Grace's breath caught. "I love you," he said. "I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know I don't deserve—" She kissed him. Soft, tender, full of all the words neither of them could say. When they broke apart, both were smiling through tears. "I love you too," Grace whispered. "Even though you're complicated, even though you're broken, maybe because of it." They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and for the first time in a decade, Tae-hyun felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope. 1 year later, Grace stood in the center of the newly renovated community library, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Children's laughter echoed off the walls, pure, bright, full of possibility. The library was everything she'd dreamed of. Reading corners with soft cushions, shelves stocked with books in English, Spanish, Korean, and Mandarin, a tech lab for kids who couldn't afford computers at home, and in the back, a small classroom where she taught free tutoring sessions 3 evenings a week. The Kim Foundation had funded it all. But more than that, Tae-hyun had helped build it, literally. She'd seen him in work gloves and a dust mask, installing shelves, painting walls, making something good with the same hands that had once done terrible things. Today was the grand reopening. The mayor was here, the principal, parents, teachers, and what felt like half the neighborhood. Grace had given a speech, short, heartfelt, about the power of stories to change lives. Mrs. Park had hugged her afterward, whispering, "You've built something beautiful here, Grace. Not just the library, but hope. You've reminded this community what's possible when we choose to believe in each other." And it was true. In the years since Vincent's arrest, something had shifted in the neighborhood. Other mentorship programs had started. Other community spaces had opened. It was as if Grace and Tae-hyun's journey, from darkness into light, had given others permission to believe in transformation too. Madam Kim was here as well, dressed in a beautiful cream-colored traditional Korean dress, holding court near the Korean literature section. Grace caught her eye across the room, and the older woman smiled, warm, knowing, proud. Now Grace stood in the children's section, watching a group of third graders sprawled on the floor, listening to a volunteer read aloud. "Miss Williams," one of her students, a girl named Maya, ran up, braids bouncing. "Mr. Kim is teaching self-defense in the activity room. Can I go?" Grace smiled. "Did you finish your reading log?" "Yes." "Then go ahead, but listen to Mr. Kim, okay? He knows what he's talking about." Maya sprinted off. Grace followed more slowly, drawn by the sound of children's voices. The activity room had been cleared of furniture. Foam mats covered the floor, and in the center, Tae-hyun stood with a group of kids, ranging from 6 to 12, teaching them basic self-defense moves. He'd changed so much in a year. Gone was the black suit, the cold expression, the aura of controlled violence. In their place, jeans, a gray sweater, laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. He moved with the same precision, but now it was in service of teaching children how to protect themselves, how to stand tall, how to be brave. His shoulder had healed completely, stronger now, perhaps, for having been broken. "Remember," he was saying, "the goal isn't to fight. The goal is to create space, to get away, to get safe." He demonstrated a simple wrist release. "Your safety matters more than looking tough. Understand?" A chorus of, "Yes, Mr. Kim." Grace leaned against the doorframe, heart full. Tae-hyun glanced up, catching her eye. His face softened into a smile. Real, warm, unguarded. After the class, after the children had been collected by parents, after the library had emptied and the lights were dimmed, Grace and Tae-hyun walked through the quiet space together. She took his hand, squeezing gently. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You were amazing with them," Grace said. "They make it easy." He paused by the window, looking out at the neighborhood. "I never thought I'd have this again. Purpose. Peace. You earned it." He turned to her. "We earned it." Grace stepped into his arms, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. "I have something for you," he said quietly. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Not a ring box, something flat and rectangular. Grace opened it. Inside was a Zippo lighter, silver, polished smooth, and engraved on the front, 2 letters, H+G. Tears blurred her vision. Tae-hyun. "The H isn't for who I used to be anymore," he said softly. "It's for who I'm becoming. With you." She looked up at him. "Are you asking me?" "I'm not ready to ask yet, but I want you to know." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. "You changed my life, Grace Williams. That first blind date, I thought it was just another obligation, something to get through. I never knew it would save my soul." Grace rose on her toes, kissing him, slow and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Besides," Tae-hyun added with a hint of mischief, "my mother keeps asking when she'll get grandchildren. I figure we should at least date for another year before I subject you to that conversation." Grace laughed, full and bright. "Your mother already asks me when I'm going to make an honest man out of you." "Does she?" "She texts me every Sunday, with recipes and very pointed questions about my long-term plans." Tae-hyun groaned. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." Grace took his hand. "I like her, and I like the future she's imagining." He squeezed her fingers. "Yeah?" "Yeah." They walked through the library one more time, turning off lights, locking doors. Outside, the Los Angeles night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city's glow. Tae-hyun's car was parked at the curb, not an SUV, but a modest sedan. Safe. Normal. He opened Grace's door, then walked around to his side. Before starting the engine, he looked at her. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. The real me. When I couldn't see it myself." Grace reached across the console, lacing her fingers through his. "That's what love does. It sees the truth beneath the armor." They drove through the quiet streets, hands intertwined. At her apartment, Tae-hyun walked her to the door. "Coffee tomorrow?" he asked. "Before school?" "Always." He kissed her forehead, tender and reverent. "Sleep well, Grace." "You too." She watched him drive away, the Zippo lighter warm in her pocket. Inside, Grace set the lighter on her nightstand beside the children's book he'd given her all those months ago. 2 small symbols of a love that had survived darkness and emerged into light. She thought about the journey, from a blind date neither of them had wanted, through danger and revelation, to this quiet moment of contentment. And she thought about her students who would grow up in a world where broken things could be mended, where lost people could be found, where love was both a strength and a choice. Grace picked up her phone and texted Tae-hyun. "I love you. Come back tomorrow ready to help with story time. The kids already love you." His reply came almost instantly. "I love you too, and I'll be there." always. Grace smiled, setting her phone aside. Outside her window, the city hummed with life. Millions of stories unfolding in millions of rooms. And in this one small apartment, a woman who believed in second chances fell asleep, knowing that some blind dates were actually destiny wearing a disguise. Tomorrow would come. There would be challenges, testimony, adjustments, the slow work of building a life from the ground up. But tonight there was peace. Tonight there was hope. Tonight there was love. And sometimes that was more than enough. It was everything. Some stories remind us that it's never too late to change, that love can find us even in our darkest moments, that broken people can heal each other. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that romance isn't just about fairy tales. It's about choosing each other every single day. Thank you for spending this time with Grace and Tae-hyun. May we all find our own light after darkness. He thought it was just another obligation, a blind date arranged by his mother, yellow light, soft jazz, a woman who asked uncomfortable questions, a woman who asked if he'd forgotten how to smile. He never knew that one evening would unravel 10 years of grief, force him to confront the man he'd become, and show him that redemption wasn't found in running from the past, but in building a future worth fighting for. Grace Williams taught him that love isn't a weakness to be feared. It's the most powerful force in the universe, one that can pull you back from the edge when you've already decided to fall. And Tae-hyun Kim taught her that broken people aren't beyond repair. They're just waiting for someone brave enough to hold them while they remember how to heal. This wasn't just a love story. It was a resurrection, a blind date that became a lifeline, a chance encounter that became forever.